the Maths CBA. So this is for second year Maths CBA. So just looking at this, you can see all the different ideas. These are just ideas different students that I've have put together for their CBAs when they were in second year, okay? So you can see the different ideas. What's the most efficient way to cycle to school? Is it more expensive to buy environmentally friendly products? How much would it cost to go to a Chelsea FC match, and so on, right? This one here, which breed of dairy cow has the most milk solids? Which milk will sell the most? Which breed will be the most profitable, and which breed would I recommend to a farmer based on my findings? Okay, so you can see there's loads of different ideas. How much would it cost to care for a dog for a year? Should Toyota make a Supra A9 electric model, right? It's just a few different ideas there. So that's just to get you thinking. And now we'll have a look at what it entails, right? So what does the second year CBA entail? So this is based on information that we got from the government, right? So the second year CBA, okay, it's a report that must be presented in a wide range of formats. So you can present it electronically, you can present it as a poster, you can present it as whatever you like. I strongly advise you just to present it as a document, so either a Word document or a PowerPoint or something along those lines. It makes it easier for yourself, right? So a student will, over a 3-week period, follow a problem-solving investigation, a mathematical investigation. So it's a problem-solving cycle. So all of that's just saying that you need to come up with a problem, basically, and you need to solve it. And that needs to be completed in second year. So we'll just skip by there and have a look. So what is the second year mathematical investigation? What it is what you need to do is you need to define a problem statement. You need to find the strategy of translating the problem into mathematics. You have to engage with mathematics to solve the problem, and you have to interpret and report. Okay. So basically what all this is saying is that you need to go away and you need to find the problem, and then you need to use maths to solve the problem, and then you need to report the problem. Okay. Now, the important thing, and it's the most important thing that you need to understand from this, is that your teachers, in other words, me, I want to be able to give you the best possible mark, but in order for me to give you the best possible mark, you need to make sure that you're meeting a certain success criteria, right? So that success criteria, I'm going to give that to you next, and that's just going to outline what you need to be able to achieve in your CBA, right? So if we look at the marking scheme, so this is what we as teachers have to use to grade how well you're performing, okay? So it's very, very simple. You have to come up with a problem, okay? And there's 4 different categories that you're going to fall into. You're either going to be in meet expectations, in line with expectations, above expectations, or exceptional. Okay, so this is what we as your teachers have as the marking scheme. If you know what the marking scheme is, you should be able to work this in your favor, and you should be able to try and tick all the boxes to make sure that you meet above expectation, or tick all the boxes to make sure that you meet in line with expectation. And you'll get a feel for that when we start looking at other projects, right? So this is done up. This is what the teachers use to assess what you're doing, but you can go through that yourself. What I'm going to go through is the exact same thing, but I've just wrote it out in a kind of student-friendly language, right? So we'll go through that now. So this is the more student-friendly one, okay? So what you need to do is you need to define a problem, okay? So if you're in the category for yet to meet expectations, you've used the given statement, okay? So that means that you weren't able to come up with your own problem, and you had to get me to give you a problem, okay? So if you're not able to come up with a problem, then you'd fall into this category. If you came up with a problem with a small bit of help and whatever else, you need a little bit of help, then you'd fall into this category for that topic, right? If you come up with your own one, and that's perfect, if you come up with your own problem, then you'd fall into this category, okay? And if it was exceptional, you posed a concise problem. So you've posed a real concise problem. So that just means that the problem that you're trying to solve is very exact. So you've picked the problem, and then you've made that problem more and more detailed, okay? So if you make it more detailed, you'll fall into this bracket here, okay? In terms of finding strategies translating the problem into mathematics, that's basically just looking at the level of maths you've used. So I've used a given strategy. So in other words, if you come up with a problem and I said what you need to do is you need to, for instance, if I told someone that you're going to do, we'll say, I want you to investigate the different routes that you can take to walk to school, okay? So if I told you to use that as your problem, the different routes you can, what's the most efficient route to walk to school? If I had to tell you to do that, and then if I had to tell you what you should do now is you can go and you can go on Google Maps and find out the different routes and highlight the different routes, and then you'll be able to measure the different routes. Then you'd fall into yet to meet expectation because you're requiring too much scaffolding from the teacher. Okay. Whereas if you went away and you've justified your chosen strategy, so if you went away and did that, and I have identified any variables, so what they mean by variables is different outcomes. So if you went away and you just did that and researched that and came up with different routes and came up with different strategies, then you'd fall into this category. Okay, so it's very easy to see what categories you should be falling into, right? Engaging with mathematics. So basically speaking, if you're going to use very simple maths, you'd fall into the lower category. If you use more complicated maths, you'd fall into the higher category. But it's not about the level of maths, it's about how you adapt the maths, okay? So you don't have to pick something that has real high-end maths. You just need to pick something that has loads of different maths in it. So like an example there would be a student that I had that did baking. So they baked buns and they had all the different ratios and stuff, and then they decided to sell the buns, and then there's a lot of maths involved in that. Okay, so there's a lot of maths involved in picking the ratios, buying the different amounts, looking at different prices and seeing, is it better to buy 1 kg for €3, or is it better to buy 750 grams for €2? That kind of stuff again. So it's not to do with how difficult the maths is, it's more to do with the amount of maths that you use, right? And the last part there, which is probably one of the most important parts because it's the actual hard copy, it's what you present, right? So interpreting and reporting. So you need to interpret and you need to report. So I'll show you, you'll see that when we move on to sample student work, and we're going to move on and show you that now, right? But if you want to get the best possible marks, then you need to make sure that you meet this criteria. So you're ticking off the boxes here, but you also need to make sure that you present it in such a fashion that it allows me to give you the best possible marks. Okay. So the best way for you to understand the level that's required is to have a look at some samples, right? So we dip in there and we look at some samples. So this was one that the Department for Education gave, and this was the question that they posed. How much would it cost to plan, to build and run a car park efficiently? The area is 6,000 meters squared for an entire year, and how much would we earn from it? So obviously that's a very concise problem, isn't it? So how much would it cost to build a car park of this size, and how much would it cost to run? And obviously there's loads of maths that we get involved there, so we're kind of ticking all the boxes along there. They've broken it down into, you can see there it's broken down. So it's broken down into sections, so everything is quite straightforward, right? Another example, the most efficient way to take my dog for a walk. So different routes you could take your dog for a walk. The problem that they posed, and it's very, very important that you get this right in your heads, you have to make sure you pose a problem. That's the main focus. So what you should be focused on now is trying to find the problem, right? And that's the hardest part. Once you know what the problem is, it's easy to structure a report around solving it, okay? So the problem they had is, I'm trying to find the most efficient route in my estate to take my dog for a walk, okay? So they posed the problem, and they looked at many different options. You can click in and see that yourselves if you go to the Padlet. So I'll share you a link. I've shared you a link to the Padlet, but I'll put that as a descriptor in the video, so you'll be able to check the Padlet for all these projects. The next one there is, should Dublin Zoo invest in a cheetah enclosure? So a cheetah enclosure, so sounds like a good project. So they looked at how much it would cost to set up a cheetah enclosure, how much the area you'd need for a cheetah, how much space do cheetahs need to run around. They looked at, would it bring more revenue to the zoo? Would people go to visit the zoo if there was a cheetah enclosure? So there was loads of different stuff. There's loads of different maths that we could look at, different surveys, the food, and you can look at these again on the Padlet. So I'll just skip on. This one again, I mentioned that earlier, the baking, so all the different recipes, all the different quantities and everything else. So the problem there was, I am making 20 donuts, 10 glazed and 10 chocolate. So I wouldn't say that's very precise. So they probably went into it here, but you have to make sure that your problem is very concise, right? So make sure that you pose a problem. So obviously every problem has a solution. So just make sure, it's probably easier if you look towards the solution and link back, how can I turn this into a problem? Okay. So if I was looking at this, she wanted to do something with baking. If I was going to advise her there, I'd say maybe the problem should be could I make money by making 20 donuts? Could I make money by making 20 donuts and selling them at a profit? And that could be your problem. So it's, can you make money? Okay. Just skip on to the next few, right? So you can see there, this one was design a floor plan for the best possible layout. So this was the best possible layout of bedroom layout. There's loads of maths in that. To be honest, I'd advise you to stay away from this. So last year, I'd say there must have been, as a maths department, we have to sit down and we have to analyze all these. But we were saying as a maths department, the amount of people that gave us back bedroom layouts was mad. So try and stay away from bedroom layouts if you can, right? Just because there were so many of them. But obviously, if you want to, that's fair enough. But we'll just skip on and try another one. So here we go. So here's your Padlet, right? So what I'm going to do is I'll just actually bring you into that Padlet now, right? So with this Padlet, right? And the link is down there, so you can type that link in to get the Padlet, okay, to have a look at it. But if you click on the Padlet, it has your marking scheme here. So if you click on that, it brings up the marking scheme, and you'll be able to see the marking scheme, okay? And you can see that there. But let's just go back. Here you have a lot of projects. Now, the ones that have the yellow ribbon, those ones have been graded by the SEC. So I put the grades in there, right? So this one was in line with expectation. This one was in line with expectation. This one was in line. You can see they're all in line. This one was above expectations and so on, right? But if you click on them, you can see what's in them. So the ones that I've put down here, my students have kindly allowed me to share them with you, right? So if you click on them, you can see what they entail. So I haven't given you what those students got graded, but it's just an idea so you can look at them and see. So like, for instance, this one, the redesign of the garden. If we click on that, you can see what's inside it, right? So we'll just flick through that there. So this is the redesigning of a garden, and you can see everything that's inside it there. So the problem and the assumptions, steps that were taken, the garden. You can see all the work that's involved in it, right? So the different areas and so on, right? Ireland's climate, charts. And it's important that all these charts are done by hand, if possible. All the averages and so on, right? At the end, there's a conclusion. Let's see. So there's other ones there you can look at. So let's try this one and let's have a look and see. Oh, that's the cheetah enclosure. So we've looked at that one more or less already, but you can look at that again. You've got, like I said, there was loads of renovating the bedrooms, so I probably won't go into them. Let's try maybe going to the soccer match, right? So going to the soccer match, you had the problem, assumptions, steps taken, and so on. So it was well laid out. The problem is going to the match. Perfect. They looked at transport, accommodation, tickets, and so on. The assumptions, that's fine. Steps that were taken, so how they researched it. Predictions, okay. The airplane, the ferry, the bus, transport, so different costs, and so on. Airbnb, accommodation. So you can see everything that's involved, right? And you can see how they linked in the maths, which one was more expensive than which, total costs, and a conclusion, and so on, right? Strengths and weakness of the project. So they reflected on it afterwards. So a good project, you're able to link in what it entails, right? So that's just loads of different ideas there, and you can look at them yourselves if you go into the Padlet. Okay, so just go into the Padlet there. I share that link with you. So we'll go on there, give you some more instructions. So the key guidelines for evidence of learning, right? So the key guidelines. So this is just guidelines to help you with how you go about doing your CBA. Okay, so the CBA needs to be approximately 400 to 600 words. Okay, so that's the guide that they gave us. That's a guide that the Department for Education gave us. You can obviously go above that and you can go below that, but a guide would be approximately 400 to 600 words. So in other words, they don't want to take it up. They don't want you to drop everything and drop all your other subjects and just focus on maths for 3 weeks. That's not what they're expecting. They're expecting the opposite. They're expecting that you'll be able to do your CBA as a project more or less in the background, okay? So all tables, graphs, and charts should be handwritten, okay? So the reason why they're doing that is because they're testing your maths. They want you to be able to make pie charts, make bar charts, make whatever else. They don't want you to just take them directly from Microsoft Word or Microsoft Excel, right? So they'd prefer if you did them by hand. Make sure the report has a structure. So make sure there's a structure to report. This is a mathematical investigation. what you are investigating needs to be very clear from the beginning of the report. So you need to make sure it's very clear what you're investigating. Structure the report. So make sure it's the structure. It helps towards finding a conclusion. So structure is very important. It helps you find a conclusion. So if you start your report with your problem, and then you structure it in such a way that each subsection, you could say, is going to lead towards finding a solution, I think it's the best way to make sure that you tick all of these here. Okay, so by all means, you are allowed to make a poster, you are allowed to record a video, you are allowed to do all those things, but if you are doing them, just do make sure it hits these targets. That's why I advise you, in my own opinion, that's why I'd be more inclined to advise you to do a structured report as opposed to just doing a recording or doing whatever else, just to make sure that you do meet the marking scheme. And the last one there, use the marking scheme, the features of quality, and this is the marking scheme. Obviously, the student-friendly one, you have access to that too, so you'll be able to check that. But use the marking scheme as a guide to make sure you are achieving top marks. Okay, so again, this all comes back to the fact that your teachers want to be giving you the best possible marks. You just need to make sure that you're presenting your CBA in such a way that your teachers are able to give you top marks. Okay, so how to get started, right? So what you need to do in the next few days is you need to start thinking, right? So you need to start brainstorming. So you need to think of an idea that will require a good deal of maths. So think of something that requires some maths. Have a look through the Padlet, look at different ideas that were generated there, and then start thinking, what can I do? What are my interests? How am I going to bring something, how am I going to put together a problem that will require a great deal of maths? Or how am I going to put together a problem that I'll be able to structure a solution towards, okay? I'd encourage you to think of at least 2 ideas and to analyze these 2 ideas, right? So what I mean by that is come up with 2 different ideas and then brainstorm and see what are the pros of the first one, what are the pros of the second one. If you've got 2 ideas or more, it shows that you're making, you're analyzing ideas. So it shows that you're being analytical. It shows that you're not just throwing down a problem and meeting the lower brackets. If you've got more than one idea, it shows that you're heading towards the higher bracket, right? Make sure you've given enough information for your teacher to give you top marks, and document all this in your final document. So keep all that as evidence for your final document to show that you didn't just spring some idea together. You actually thought about it, you analysed it, and you came up with a good idea, basically, right? So that is definitely the hardest part, coming up with the idea, and that's something that maybe you should be discussing with your family, your friends, just thinking of different ideas that you could incorporate the maths. If you want my help with it and stuff, that's obviously fine, but do keep in mind that uses a given problem statement. So if you're looking for a problem statement, so if you're looking for a problem to get going with, you're aiming towards the lower marks, and we don't want that. We want you in the higher marks. So try and come up with an idea yourself. I'll be here to link in. Feel free to ask me questions, send me messages to know, do I think this is okay? But the main link that we're going to have is through Teams. So when you're doing all this, can you just make sure we have Teams set up and we have our class notebook set up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a notebook for CBA, and in that notebook for CBA, any stuff that you put in is going to be linked to your CBA. So that way all of your stuff will all be in the one place. So say for instance, one of the students in the class will just say student X has questions about their CBA. If you have all of the information put into that section in your class notebook, okay, then I'll be able to link in. So if student X asks me about their CBA, I'll be able to go into that class notebook and I'll be able to see everything that they've done on that CBA. It's just a way of making sure that all of your stuff is compiled in one place, okay? So I'll set up that folder for you in class notebook so that's there, so that you're ready to get going, basically, right? So here we can see step 3, and step 3 is to write out a clear problem that you want to investigate. After all, this is a mathematical investigation, okay? So just get your problem, write it out, and then start investigating it. Choosing the problem is the hardest part, so make sure and give this time and consideration, okay? So I've already kind of touched on that, okay? So that would cover us for the first one. And now at this point, what I want to do is I want to just tell you about when you're uploading all this to Class Notebook, right? So I would encourage you to download the Office Lens app, right? So the Office Lens app, because what that is that's an app that takes pictures. So it's an app that you can take pictures with, and it uploads those pictures as PDFs. So if I was you, what I'd do is, if you started getting ideas together, you could set a page in your CBA notebook and you could put it down as idea one. And whatever work you've done, you could open the Office Lens app, okay, and you could take pictures of the work that you've done, and it will upload all those pictures as one single PDF, right? And what that means is it'll all upload as one single PDF in your OneNote, okay? Now, you don't have to do this. The reason why I'm telling you to this is because if you start doing this, it makes it very easy for you to it makes it very easy as you continue on with the project. It'll make it easier for all your CBAs, to be honest, right? So if you download the Office Lens app, so it's basically just the camera app that takes pictures, and when it takes pictures, it you can upload them then as PDFs, and what you can do is you can put 4 or 5 pictures together and it sends them off as a single PDF. And what I mean by that is a single PDF just means that it comes through as one document. Okay, so instead of coming through as 5 or 6 different pictures and it all being very kind of messy looking, it sends them through as a single document. So that means that the pictures will all come in one under the other and they'll come in the right format. Okay, so it's just the tip that I have, and I put that down there. I would advise you to use the Office Lens app when uploading this stuff to OneNote. Okay, now the other thing to keep in mind is at the very end of this, all I need to have is your project basically. So you can see there that Padlet that I made, that was made up of the students' work from last year and of different students' work. So you don't need to be doing all this with Teams and OneNote and all the rest. If you're happy enough to do all this and to keep everything together in your own resources, keep everything saved in a certain folder, and then just send me on the PowerPoint or the Word document or whatever it is at the end, that's perfectly fine too. Okay, so there's no pressure to go away and to be jumping through hoops here. If you're happy enough to tip away and do that project and just send me on stuff as you please, that's perfectly fine too. But I just think for good practice, it's good to have everything in the one place. So I think it's good to have everything in the one place if that's what you're thinking, right? So for now, what I want you to do is I just want you to spend the next couple of days thinking of different ideas and seeing how you can put those ideas together. For today and for tomorrow and the next few days, I'm not expecting people to be able to think of these overnight. So you will need a few days to think about this. So what I'm going to do is I'll give you a couple of days to think about this. Have a chat with your parents, your brothers, sisters, have a chat with different people, do a bit of research, just think of different ideas. Think of how am I going to make a maths CBA? What maths problem can I think of, or what kind of problems can I think of that I need to solve? If you've thought of something that's in that Padlet, that's fine. You can use that by all means. But again, the more original and the more outside the box, you could say, thinking that's applied, the better the project, generally speaking. So if you're an original problem and it's concise and it's clear and it's something that's kind of more abstract or something that's slightly outside the norm, then you're aiming towards top marks. Whereas if it's something that's quite basic and it's quite repetitive and it's something that we've seen a few times over and over again, then you're not really falling into that bracket. So what I mean by that is, if you were going to do up a room at home in the house, that's fine. But don't just have it as, I decided I want to do up a room, I'm going to do up a bedroom. Make it something that's more relevant. So think about something that's more concise or more exact, that you wanted to convert a loft to a bedroom, or something that's more kind of, I don't know, you know what I mean, something that's just a little bit more exact, I suppose you could say, right? But that's it for now. So for now, all you need to do is you need to go away, you need to think about the CBA. I'll send this on. You'll be able to go through it and just you'll be able to pause it and go through it as you please, and you'll be able to think about it, have a scroll through the Padlet, look at different ideas, and I'll put that folder together in your OneNote account, and you'll be able to start putting ideas into it, and I'll be able to start seeing ideas.